In the depths of Finland's ancient forests, there lived a creature so revered that its true name could never be spoken aloud. A being considered not prey but family, not beast but king, not mortal but divine ancestor walking among the pines. This is the story of Otso, the sacred bear, and why for thousands of years the Finnish people saw this magnificent creature as nothing less than the living embodiment of their gods. Imagine living in a world where speaking the wrong word could mean death, where the very name of an animal held such power that to utter it was to invite disaster. This was the reality for Finland's ancestors when it came to the brown bear, Ursus arctos. But here's what's extraordinary. They couldn't call it karhu, the modern Finnish word for bear. That name was forbidden. Too direct, too dangerous. Instead, they developed an entire secret vocabulary, dozens of euphemisms, each more beautiful and reverent than the last. Otso, perhaps the most sacred name meaning apple gatherer or simply the revered one. When spoken, it carried the weight of prayer. Metsän, honey paw, acknowledging its love for the golden sweetness of wild beehives. Kontio, dweller of the land, recognizing its dominion over the earth itself. Kultahera, golden lord, for its precious, noble nature. Metsän Kuningas, king of the forest, the title that says it all. But why such elaborate linguistic gymnastics? Because in the animistic worldview of ancient Finland, names held power. To speak the true name was to summon the spirit, to challenge its authority, or worse, to show disrespect to what they believed was their own divine ancestor. This wasn't mere superstition. This was theological precision. In the world of the ancient Finns, every creature had väki, spiritual power. But the bear's väki was so immense that it required careful handling. According to Wilfrid Bonser's 1928 study, The Mythology of the Kalevala, this linguistic taboo reveals something profound. The bear was never seen as other. It was family. It was ancestor. It was, quite literally, a god walking among mortals. It is recorded that even into the 19th century, Finnish hunters would spend days purifying themselves before a bear hunt, not because they feared the animal's physical power, but because they were about to meet their grandfather. But how far back does this reverence go? The answer will astound you. Bear worship in Finland isn't just old, it's Paleolithic. We're talking about spiritual practices that stretch back over 10,000 years, making this one of humanity's oldest continuous religious traditions. At sites like Raisala and other prehistoric settlements, archaeologists have found bear bones carefully arranged in ritualistic patterns, bear skulls facing east toward the rising sun, and most remarkably, human burials alongside bear remains, suggesting these ancient peoples saw no fundamental difference between human and bear spirits. Think about this. While civilizations rose and fell, while religions spread and died, the sacred bear cult of Finland endured. Through the Bronze Age, Iron Age, Swedish rule, Russian occupation, and even partial Christianization, the bear remained king. In Finnish mythology, ordinary animals were born on Earth, but not Otso. Oh no, the sacred bear deserved an origin story worthy of its divine status. Picture this. Ukko, the supreme sky god, lord of thunder and lightning, looks down upon the forest and decides it needs a king. So he reaches into the very fabric of the heavens and creates a being so magnificent that it cannot be born through ordinary means. The bear is lowered from the sky in a golden cradle, or sometimes in a silver basket lined with clouds. It descends not to just any place, but to sacred groves, holy mountains, places where the veil between earth and sky is thinnest. The bear's celestial origin wasn't just poetic metaphor, it was astronomical fact. When Finnish hunters performed the sacred skull ritual after a successful hunt, they always positioned the bear's skull facing northeast, directly toward the constellation we know as Ursa Major, the Great Bear. This wasn't coincidence. In Finnish cosmology, bears who died on Earth would return to their stellar home, only to be reborn again when the time was right. The skull, positioned correctly, served as a spiritual GPS, guiding the bear's soul home to the stars. It is documented that this practice continued well into the Christian era, with some remote communities maintaining the skull ritual into the 1800s. Not all Finnish communities told the same creation story, and these variations reveal the rich complexity of bear mythology. In some tales, Otso was the child of Tapio, the king of the forest, and Mielikki, the forest goddess and protector of game. This made the bear not just divine, but royalty born of royalty. Other stories suggested an even more intimate connection. The bear was once human, transformed through ancient magic or divine blessing. This wasn't punishment, this was elevation. To become a bear was to become something greater than human. And then there were the most profound myths of all, those suggesting that humans and bears shared a common ancestor, that we were quite literally siblings separated by form but united by spirit. But perhaps the most compelling reason for bear worship lay in something the ancient Finns witnessed every year that seemed to them nothing short of miraculous: hibernation. Think about this from their perspective. Every autumn, the mighty bear would disappear into the earth, into caves, dens, hollow trees. And there it would lie, apparently dead, for months. No breath you could see, no movement, no sign of life. Then, as the snows melted and spring arrived, the bear would emerge, reborn, resurrected, alive. And often, it emerged not alone but with cubs, new life, literally born from apparent death. To a people living through brutal Nordic winters, this cycle wasn't just impressive, it was divine proof. The bear possessed the ultimate power, mastery over death itself. We now understand the biology of hibernation, but we must never underestimate how miraculous this appeared to ancient peoples. In their world, nothing came back from death except through divine intervention. The bear did it every year. So how do you hunt a god? The answer is, you don't. In traditional Finnish culture, bears were never hunted in the way we might imagine. Instead, they were encountered through divine will, or they chose to sacrifice themselves for the good of the community. Before any bear encounter, hunters would spend days in preparation, not sharpening spears or checking traps, but purifying their souls. They would fast, abstain from intimacy with their wives, and perform elaborate divination rituals to ensure the forest spirits approved of their actions. The hunter would visit sacred sites, leave offerings for Tapio and Mielikki, and most importantly, they would apologize in advance to the bear they had not yet met. When the moment came, it could never be described as an ambush or attack. Instead, Finnish folklore is filled with accounts of bears that seemed to offer themselves, walking deliberately into the path of hunters, or appearing in dreams to announce their readiness to sacrifice for the community. One documented 19th century account describes a hunter who reported that a bear approached him, lay down, and seemed to wait peacefully for death, as if fulfilling some cosmic appointment. Even the killing itself was ritualized. Special songs were sung, asking the bear's forgiveness, explaining the necessity, promising that its spirit would be honored and its body treated with reverence. And here's a crucial detail. If possible, the killing blow was attributed to foreign weapons or accidents caused by strangers. This wasn't deception. This was theological necessity. The community could not be seen as murderers of their divine relative. What happened next reveals everything about how the Finns viewed the bear's true nature. The dead bear wasn't dragged back to the village like a hunting trophy. It was carried home like an honored guest arriving for a celebration. Special sleds were constructed. The bear's body was often covered with fine fabrics or furs, its face turned toward the sky. The procession back to the village resembled a funeral cortege for a beloved king, rather than hunters returning with prey. All the while, songs were sung, not songs of triumph, but songs of mourning, gratitude, and welcome. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the entire bear cult was what happened when the hunters reached the village. They lied. Deliberately, elaborately, and with the full participation of the entire community. According to ethnographic records, the hunters would tell the village that they had not killed the bear at all. Instead, they found it already dead. Perhaps it had died of old age, or fallen from a tree, or been killed by foreigners passing through. Everyone knew this was fiction. Everyone participated in the deception, because this wasn't about truth in the modern sense. This was about spiritual truth. The community needed to maintain innocence in the eyes of the bear's spirit and the forest gods. Children were sometimes told that the bear had come as a willing guest, eager to attend its own feast. In some communities, they would set a place for the bear at the table, as if it were attending as a living participant rather than the guest of honor at its own wake. The Pejaiset, the bear feast, was the most important ceremony in Finnish spiritual life. More than a meal, more than a ritual, it was the moment when the community collectively maintained cosmic balance, ensured their survival, and participated in the divine cycle of death and rebirth. The entire village participated. The bear's meat was prepared with meticulous care, divided according to ancient protocols. Every part was used, not from practical necessity alone, but from spiritual requirement. To waste any part of the sacred bear would be an unthinkable insult. During the feast, the community's most skilled singers would perform epic songs, sometimes lasting hours, recounting the bear's divine origin, its journey from the stars to earth, and its willing sacrifice for the people. These songs, many preserved in the Kalevala, weren't just entertainment. They were theological instruction, ensuring everyone present understood the cosmic significance of what they were participating in. From the sky the bear descended, from the star-bright heavens falling. Honey Paws stepped soft from heaven, golden-furred one left the stars. These weren't just stories, they were historical accounts, as real to the participants as any modern documentary. The consumption of the bear was itself a sacred act. By eating the divine flesh, the community absorbed some of the bear's power, wisdom, and spiritual strength. But this came with responsibility. Specific portions were allocated to different community members based on age, status, and spiritual role. The heart might go to the bravest hunter, the liver to the wisest elder, the fat to be saved for medicinal purposes. Children received their first taste of bear meat as a rite of passage, marking their entry into the deeper mysteries of their culture's spiritual life. As the feast concluded, a final ritual took place, the community's formal apology to the bear's spirit. This wasn't guilt, this was respect. They acknowledged that they had taken the life of a divine being for their survival, and they promised that this sacrifice would not be forgotten or taken lightly. Representatives would speak directly to the bear's spirit, explaining the necessity, expressing gratitude, and most importantly, promising that its essence would live on in the community it had fed. But the most crucial part of the entire ceremony was yet to come, ensuring the bear's spirit could return home to the stars and be reborn. The bear's skull was collected with reverence approaching worship. It was cleaned, blessed, and prepared for its final journey. This wasn't just bone. This was the dwelling place of the bear's immortal essence. The skull was then carried to a sacred grove, usually dominated by an ancient pine tree. This tree, called Karhuhanka or bear pine, became the launching point for the spirit's return to the heavens. The skull was mounted high in the branches, always facing northeast toward the constellation Ursa Major. The positioning was precise. This was spiritual navigation, ensuring the bear's soul could find its way home to the stars. And there the skull would remain, through seasons and years, slowly weathering back to the earth while the bear spirit made its celestial journey. According to Finnish belief, the bear would rejoin its stellar family, live among the stars, and eventually choose to be reborn again in the earthly forest. The cycle would continue, eternal and sacred. Archaeological evidence confirms this practice continued for millennia. Even today, in remote areas of Finland and neighboring regions, researchers occasionally find bear skulls in old pine trees, silent witnesses to this ancient faith. When Christianity arrived in Finland, it might have been expected to end the bear cult entirely. Instead, something remarkable happened. Adaptation. The bear simply found new roles within Christian symbolism, sometimes associated with saints, sometimes with resurrection imagery that resonated perfectly with hibernation mythology. Church records from the medieval period show that bear feasts continued well into the Christian era, simply reframed as celebrations of God's provision rather than pagan worship. Today, through movements like Suomenusko, the revival of traditional Finnish faith, some modern Finns are rediscovering their ancestral relationship with the sacred bear. These aren't historical reenactments, but living spiritual practices, adapted for the modern world but rooted in ancient wisdom. The organization Karhun Kansa, Bear People, continues ritual practices that honor bears as supernatural and holy ancestral beings, maintaining a connection to practices that stretch back to the Stone Age. Even in secular modern Finland, the bear remains special. It's a national symbol, protected by law, and treated with a respect that echoes ancient reverence. Finnish children grow up with bear stories that, while modernized, still carry whispers of the old faith. In the forests of Finland, brown bears still roam. They no longer face hunters performing ancient rituals, but they remain what they always were. Otso, Messikämmen, Metsän Kuningas, the honey-pawed golden lord, the king of the forest. And perhaps, just perhaps, when the northern lights dance across the Arctic sky and shine down on the ancient pines of Lapland, the spirits of the sacred bears look down from their stellar home and remember when humans knew their true names, honored their sacrifice, and understood that we are all part of the same sacred story. In the old-growth forests of memory, the sacred bear still walks, and those who listen closely can still hear the ancient songs that call him home to the stars.